It was one of those cold, crisp mornings. In late fall, the kind that nips at your skin and lingers with the promise of winter. The leaves had already begun to fall, scattering across the sidewalks like a blanket of gold and brown for Carla, a single mother working 2 jobs to support her 2 young children. It was just another hectic morning. Her car, an old rusted sedan, was barely holding on. It had become a constant source of worry. Every time she turned the key, she breathed at herself for the engine's reluctant start, hoping it wouldn't fail her in the middle of a busy day. As she rushed out the door, juggling her purse, a lunch bag, and a thermos of coffee, she noticed her neighbor Steve struggling with his own car. His shiny new truck was parked in his driveway, hood up, steam rising from the engine. Steve was a mechanic by trade, but it seemed even he couldn't figure out what was wrong. He looked frustrated, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cool morning air. Carla, who had never been one to stand by and watch, made a split-second decision. She walked over, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. Need some help? She asked, her voice warm but tired. Steve looked up, his eyes narrowing as if surprised by the offer. You sure? I mean, it's a bit more complicated than just tightening a bolt. Carla smiled softly. I fix cars before. Nothing complicated about it. Let me take a look. Steve hesitated for a moment before nodding. He stepped aside, allowing her to approach. She'd never done more than change a flat tire or top off some fluids, but there was something about the way the engine purred when it started, a sound she'd come to recognize in her own car that made her instinctively reach for the tools she had in her trunk. Minutes turned into hours, but Carla didn't mind. She worked steadily, her mind in sync with the rhythm of the job. She could hear Steve talking to someone on the phone in the background, but it didn't bother her. Her focus was sharp, and she didn't stop until the truck roared back to life with a satisfying hum. Steve was in disbelief. How did you even know what to do? He asked, his voice filled with awe. Carla shrugged, wiping her hands on a rag. It's just something I've learned over time. Can't always rely on others to fix things, especially when you don't have the money for it. Steve stood there for a moment, taking in her words. He had no idea how hard Carla worked just to keep everything running smoothly. He'd never really seen the struggles she faced as a single mother. I don't know what to say. This was incredible. You saved me. Carla smiled and wiped her brow. It was nothing, just a little kindness, but Steve wasn't the type to let something like this go unnoticed. A few days later, when Carla was picking up her kids from school, Steve approached her with an envelope in hand. I've been thinking about what you did for me, he said, handing her the envelope. This isn't much, but I wanted to repay you. Carla looked at him confused. Steve, you don't have to. I insist, he said, cutting her off. You've done something that changed my whole perspective, so please just take it. It's a small token of my gratitude. She opened the envelope to find a check for a sum far larger than she'd ever expected. It was enough to cover rent for several months, enough to keep her car in good condition for a while, enough to buy her kids the things they needed. Steve, I can't accept this, Carla said, her voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means to me. Steve smiled gently, his eyes filled with understanding. You helped me without expecting anything in return. The least I can do is make sure you don't have to worry about the next few months. You deserve that. Carla felt a lump in her throat. She'd been so used to giving without receiving, to putting everyone else's needs first, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. And in that moment, she realized that kindness wasn't just about helping others. It was about letting others help you too. It was about building a community of support where no one was left to struggle alone. The days that followed were filled with unexpected blessings. With the extra money Steve had given her, Carla was able to fix her car and buy new clothes for her children. She was able to breathe a little easier, knowing that she wouldn't be one crisis away from falling apart. And though the money didn't change the hard work she still had to put in, it gave her something even more valuable: hope. Months later, when Steve's truck broke down again, Carla was the first person he called. This time they fixed it together, and as they worked side by side, Steve couldn't help but think about how one small act of kindness had transformed everything for both of them in a world that often felt too busy, too cold, too indifferent. They had found warmth in each other's company and in the quiet moments of their friendship. Both Carla and Steve discovered that sometimes the greatest rewards come not from what we expect, but from the kindness we give freely without hesitation, and the love that blossoms in return. Kindness has a ripple effect, transforming not only the lives of those who receive it, but also the hearts of those who give it. You never know how one selfless act can change the course of someone's life, and in the end, we all are connected through the simple, powerful act of helping one another.